We've watched you playing cricket and every kind of game. At football, golf and polo, you men have made your name. But now your country calls you to play your part in war. And no matter what befalls you, we shall love you all the more. So come and join the forces as your fathers did before.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound pleasure to introduce Mr. Ron Vickress, our guest speaker here this morning. History is being created today. I doubt if anywhere in Australia that they've had a centenarian, let alone somebody be celebrating his 101st birthday in just a few weeks' time, come and make an address like this today. You're not only witnessing history, but standing next to me is a man who has witnessed history himself. I'm not going to take any of his thunder away, because I'm not too sure what he's going to say, and I don't want to take anything away from what he wants to say. But Ron joined the Royal Australian Navy at 17. He was a signalman, standing on the bridge, is what we call in the Navy a bunting totter. And after paying off in the Navy, he became a teacher on the far north coast. He's a UNE graduate. We're holding 2 degrees, a Bachelor of Letters and a Master of Education. He holds a UNE Community Alumni Award. He's also an Armidale Senior Citizen of the Year. He was a senior lecturer at Armidale Teachers College in English and Drama. Now, I'm not going to say anything more, but I must say I am proud to welcome Ron here today, and please make him welcome.
Because of our dimensions, we rolled terribly. Heavy, big ships, but on convoy with us. Said they could see down our funnel. We went over so far they could see down our funnel. We go that way and this way. But not only did we go that way and this way, we went that way and that way too, because we were so short. We banged, we went up a way, boom. Up a way, boom. So we're going boom that way and we're going this. Somebody said it was like being in a washing machine or something. All this is leading up to what most sailors who joined minesweepers did when they boarded the ship. It was lovely. First couple of days I was on there, lovely sailing, but when we went out through the Grafton Passage into the Coral Sea, the waves started. Boy, did it. And what happened? Seasick. I don't know whether you've ever been seasick. It's not a very lovely thing to talk about today, but it's very important to me. Seasickness. Boy, did we go down. Nurses, there's no hospital, there's no a little ship. We only had a sick berth attendant, he was called. He was St John's ambulance officer. Anyway, there's no cure for seasickness. You just got to get over it. And so, for 3 days on the side of the ship, morning and evening. And this is when mateship comes in, shipmates. Who looks after you? Your own mates in the ship. And so what happened? One of the shipmates stood in for me, took my job on. So he's doing my job as well as his own. This is what I'm calling shipmate or mateship.
What was Australia like in the 1930s when you were a teenager? Was there stress, a sense of foreboding?
Not really in that way. The profession's still in full tilt, and so things were pretty lean in that respect, but everybody put up with that and they got on well with each other. We were aware of things happening in Europe, and likely wars were happening over there, but we were getting our news through the newspaper and through the wireless, but otherwise Just life went on quite amicably, I thought.
And you were a teenager.
Yeah.
You signed up at 17 years and 8 months. So you're quite a young man. What motivated you?
Well, largely because my dad had been in the First World War, as a lot of my uncles too, and so right through the 30s, I used to watch these men. You grew up with these men, and if they expected us to do what they'd done in 1915, that's what we took it for granted. That's what we do too, and we did. Nothing heroic about it.
So tell me about what happened after you were enlisted. Where were you sent for training and what did you learn?
Well, I was sent to Flinders Naval Depot in Western Port Bay in Victoria to learn to be a signalman. That involved learning 5 codes, as I call them. There was a Morse code, which is a did-did-da-da-da signal by light, not by sound, with a lantern, and then the semaphore, which we use arms out, and this way you should have learned it in the Boy Scouts actually, but this is different. And then we had the flags that went up the mast, and they were alphabetical flags and numeral flags, and they had the same flags in all these services, the RN, Royal Navy, US Navy, and the Merchant Service, but each flag meant something different in those. So we had 3 different codes there.
That sounds like a lot to learn.
It was. We didn't realise at the time it was the longest training in the Navy at that time. And so we had interesting affairs of marching up and down the Flinders Naval Depot lawn, pretending to be ships at sea.
So after marching around pretending to be ships, you actually were put on board the HMAS Pirie and sent and deployed overseas. What happened? Tell me about that ship.
Pirie was a minesweeper corvette. Their main task was minesweeping and also escort duties, anti-submarine duties, of course. That was part of the equipment of the ship. They're very small ships. We also say we're much smaller than the Manly Ferry. And of course, we were minesweepers. We had a very shallow draft. That means what part under the water. You had to have very shallow because the mines that we were sweeping were moored at 10 feet in those days, and so our depth was only 9 foot. So we had a 1 foot gap. The consequence of having such a flat bottom was we rolled.
That would have led to seasickness, I imagine.
I can't remember my first days at sea. Well, I do remember just that at the first off, it was in the evening, and we went out into the Coral Sea, and it was quite calm for a while, but then the waves started, and I don't remember the next 3 days much. I was seasick, laid out on the upper deck and looked after by my shipmates.
And seasick, crowded in with 80 other people. It must have been terrible.
Well, we stayed on the upper deck. We didn't go down below where most of the crew were. So, yes, it was. But I don't recall much, but the crew looked after me till we got to Milne Bay. That was our first trip. And then I recovered a bit there, nearly coming back to Cairns or Townsville. Nearly got my sea legs by then.
You witnessed a lot of important moments in the war in the Pacific. Can you talk about those now? For instance, you saw the aftermath of the Japanese attack on Darwin. What did you see? What did you witness?
Yes, we didn't go there until quite a while after the bombing, but when we pulled in into the wharf, there was the Neptuna, the supply ship that was blown up by the Japanese right alongside the wharf. So we had to moor alongside it. Then we had to walk up to the town to see the damage there, and the post office and the naval headquarters and the Commissioner's house, they were all damaged. They've been patched up to be operative, but they and still, well, wasn't being bombed so much then. They were more going down to bomb the airfields further south.
Mm. But still, a couple of hundred people had been killed in Darwin.
That's right.
By the Japanese.
We estimated at 250 around about.
Another of the great moments of the war that you witnessed was the Japanese mini-subs coming into Sydney Harbour. What did you see?
Well, I didn't see it actually, but where I was, I said an ARP warden, but in an outer suburb of Sydney. But we were called on to duty at midnight that day or that evening, and we didn't know what for. It was until the next day that we learned that 3 or 4 Japanese, 3 midget submarines had come into Sydney Harbour with the intention of torpedoing the USS Chicago, which was alongside Garden Island. Well, they didn't hit the Chicago, they hit a ferry, sunk it. It had 20 men on board. HMAS Pirie, it was called. Afterwards, 4 days later, I was down in the Botanic Gardens near where I worked, and I watched the remains of one of these midget subs lifted up out of the harbour and dumped down on the lawns of the Botanic Gardens.
And that's the one that you can see today in the National War Memorial.
That's right,
in Canberra.
yeah.
And they're extraordinarily tiny for 2 people to
Yes, I remember saying to my mates, but we talked about how could 2 men fit in that? It's so tiny.
I think that's the reaction everybody has when they see the sub in the War Memorial. So at the end of the war, you witnessed the Japanese surrender. Tell me about how you felt at that time.
2 things, I suppose I remember. One was that we had the lights on when we'd been 3 years in blackout. So the ships were all lit. That was the first thing that struck me, but then I went up on the top of the bridge and I remember writing words something like, it seems the whole world is at peace. It was quiet, there was no noise, because usually you've got something running on the ship, your engines so you lived with all as the pings and so on. It was so peaceful and quiet. So I wrote a letter that evening about that, what I felt. I still got it. Reading from my letter of the time, there was quite a display of aircraft this morning, loads of great B-29s and carrier-borne planes. It certainly was a good show. The rain, which had been drizzling down since we arrived, let up today, and I was able to take a look at the factories in Yokohama and see that though they most look undamaged, they are actually gutted and just a shell left standing. As yet we haven't seen any Japs or any of our fellows prisoners of war. We don't seem likely to. We're just anchored among a great pile of ships, but our canteen today donated thousands of smokes to the prisoners who are being evacuated to the hospital ships.
Ron, did your wartime experiences affect you in any way that led you to become a peace activist against the Vietnam War?
I suppose they did, but really I was living or teaching in Wagga Wagga at the time, and I wrote a play there. I decided that we shouldn't be anywhere to do with Vietnam on 2 grounds. One, that we had nothing to do with their foreign policy, and we're really only doing it because of the current favour of the US. And I suspected that we're having secret bases set up in Australia at the time, which I didn't approve of, of course. And it happened to be I transferred to Sydney at Teachers College, and so I joined there and became a member of the moratorium committee in Sydney. I was objected on the 2 grounds, one on the grounds that conscription was against my principles, or Australian principles, and the other was, just current favour of the US didn't impress me one bit.
So from signalman to war veteran to peace activist to teacher and then writer, poet and so forth. How did all that happen? How did it unfold?
Well, I was transferred from, going back to my teaching in the high school days at Ballina, and my wife and I had rejoined the Ballina Players, a little amateur theatre. Somehow or other struck a chord with me for some reason. I became interested in it. And we went to a few teaching schools in Sydney, and eventually I started to write plays. And I found that I had ability to write good vocab speech. And that continued in a time in Ballina, and then when I went to Sydney, I became even more involved then. And by accident, I come across what was I was designed to be a teacher actor, let's put it that way. So teaching a drama became part of my teaching program, but writing for it, and I had the good luck to be sent to the teachers' colleges as a teacher of drama. So I did that at Wagga Wagga, and then in Sydney, and then eventually in Armidale, where I came into my own there, because I had people doing their little extras in drama in the college. And I had a group. I wrote for them. I actually played with them.
One of the things that has always amazed me is that you just didn't teach them how to act. You didn't teach them how to read a play.
Yeah.
You wrote plays for them to perform.
For them, that's right. And that was that became I travelled around with them in the bus to various drama festivals. It was a gift. But I didn't know how I got the opportunity. Yeah.
How many books and plays and books of poetry have you written, do you think?
Oh, I haven't calculated. I've got it written down somewhere, but it's about 18 plays I've written. I've read about 2,000 pieces of verse, I call them. And I've written a couple of novels as well.
And you've even appeared in one of Australia's groundbreaking films, The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith. You played the magistrate in that. Tell us about that.
That was another mystery, of course. In the local newspaper, there was an advertisement for extras to take part in this shooting of a scene in the courthouse in Armidale. And I said, no, it's not for me. I'm a theatre man, not a film man, so I just ignored it. Out of the blue, I got a woman ringing me up, May Shepperdsey, Fred Shepperdsey's wife, to ask me why I hadn't become an extra. I said, no, thank you. I'm a theatre man, not a film man. She thought that was a bit snobby, but anyway. And then I said, anyway, it's set in the year 1900, and my hair's not suited to 1900. So he said, well, you can have your hair cut. No, I said, I'm not going to have a haircut just to be in a film. So she didn't give up, though. She said, can I come and have a talk to you? I said, yes, do. So she did. We had a nice amicable talk, but she went away. I said, no, I'm not in it, no thanks. But she undermined me. A fortnight later, I got a call from a man that was looking after the costumes to say, he said, why don't you come around to the costume room and be fitted out? I said, I'm not in it. He said, he said, yes, you are. You're going to play the judge. And he wears a big full-bottom wig. I said, hello, this girl's, he's pretty smart. He's got this, I'm talking about hair, and she put the wig on.
But you didn't even have time to rehearse. They just gave you the script to read.
Yes, when I turned up on the Saturday morning in the courthouse, there's Fred Shepperdsey's there, and he all he gave me was a piece of paper of what I got to say from bench. No rehearsals. I even had a complaint about that eventually. I said, I can't read this without my glasses, and they're not in 1900 glasses, they're horn-rimmed.
So of all your creative works, which are you most fond of?
Well, it's a bit hard to choose, but I've chosen something short, which is a piece of verse. It's called Butterfly Hearts. Somewhere, butterfly hearts are fashioned, not stamped out in stolid steel, nor moulded from molten iron, nor fabricated in assembly factories, nor engineered in sterile laboratory, but fashioned by some master craftsman, the Amati of heart fashioning. The material long chosen and laid up till the master is ready to craft, to lovingly linger over the delicate detail, slowly and tenderly turning, stringing and tuning, till it is reluctantly surrendered, conferred upon some special soul. Of course, no two butterfly hearts come alike from the master's hands. Each has its own tune to play, its select flowers to dip and sip, its wondrous wings to flutter, its nuptial heights to beguile. If you have a butterfly heart, despair not at its vagaries, its fear of capture and crush, but rejoice in its lightness, the sun's caress and the flower's delight. If you meet a butterfly heart, open your nectar to it. Do not clutch, for you will so easily destroy. Accept its gifts of sips and kisses. Be dazzled by its dainty arabesques, for only a few are vouchsafed to bow a tune on its tremulous strings. Butterfly hearts are rare and precious.
Lovely.
The UNE Alumni Community Award is presented to a UNE graduate who has made significant contributions to the community sector, philanthropic or public life, or to support non-for-profit organisations in Australia and internationally. This individual embodies UNE's values of access and inclusion, and also will be seen as an inspiration to the members of the community generally, but also to the UNE community to show how we can support the places that we live in. Vice-Chancellor.
Chancellor, at 98 years old, Ron Vickress is one of only two surviving veterans in Armidale from World War II. Ron graduated from UNE with a Bachelor of Letters in 1963 and a Master of Education in 1980. We had a conversation outside and we believe we will claim Ron today as the oldest alumnus of the University of New England. Ron's teaching career spanned over 30 years, including as a senior lecturer in English, drama and communication at the former Armidale College of Advanced Education from 1973 to 1985. He has written over 40 books, including an autobiographical work taking in his war years. He has written, produced, directed and acted in over 50 plays, linking his academic work with the theatre scene in Australia and overseas. He has been a major figure in the Armidale theatre scene and starred as the judge in the well-known movie The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith. As a teacher, RSL member, sportsman and artist, Ron has spent his entire life giving to the community, largely as an unpaid volunteer, assisting not-for-profit community groups. Mr. Ron Vickress is awarded an Alumni Community Award in recognition of his significant contributions to the New England community, particularly through drama and theatre. Chancellor, I have the honour to present to you Mr. Ronald Vickress for the 2023 Alumni Community Award.
In recognition of your work as a teacher and of drama and literature and for all of the literature you've created, as a former student of the University of New England, you were awarded their top alumni award very recently. What did that mean to you?
Well, I didn't realise that I was worthy of such a thing. It hadn't occurred to me, because I was then living in Guyra, and so my association in Armidale I thought I wasn't noticed when I was up in Guyra that I was getting an award from Armidale. It took me a while to realise that some of the things I'd done there were part of what the university was. And of course I know that I made it my business to be involved in communities wherever I lived. So one didn't do it to be recognised, you did it because that's what you wanted to do.
Yours is the epitome of a life well lived, Ron. What advice would you give the rest of us who aspire to do the same?
I think the major thing in life for me is friends, or making friends. And so you have to be outgoing and be positive in that friendship. That's where my pleasure comes from, my friends. And keeping a cheerful view of life and not grumble too much about it, and look ahead, not behind. That's past, you can't do anything about that, but you can do something about the future. So I want to keep a cheerful attitude to life. I say, look for something you can do that helps other people too, as well as yourself.